Hey, this is Tony here with Salt Strong, and in this video I just wanted to show you some tips as far as preventative reel maintenance. What you're not going to see in this video is me take the reel completely apart. I really don't recommend doing that. I leave that to the professionals because I have taken some reels completely apart and then I cannot get them put back together. So we're really just going to be focusing on the moving parts that are external, because that can be very important. Also talk about just what you should do when you get off the water and when you get home and before you go out on a trip. So what I'm going to do here is demonstrate using this Daiwa. This is a Daiwa Fuego. I also have a Shimano Naski that I'm going to be showing you an issue with it because I didn't do proper maintenance on it. But as far as what you need is just a couple small screwdrivers, a Phillips head, also a flat head just in case you can't get the screws off with the Phillips head, also some reel oil or reel lube. Many manufacturers out there make it. Don't really have a personal preference. This is just what I have laying around. Also some Q-tips will definitely be handy. And then once everything's said and done, I like to use cleanse oil to coat the reel and give it sort of a protective coating. And also you want to have a rag handy for that as well. So first things first, as soon as you get off the water, it's really important to lightly mist your reel with some fresh water. You can have a spray bottle filled with fresh water that you can keep in your boat or in your truck or in your car, and just lightly mist the reel with that fresh water. Once the reel is sprayed down, make sure you dry it off. Also, something you don't want to do is use a lot of pressure or drown your reels with fresh water, because that will actually push salt further into your reel and can create more problems over time. So just spray it down with some fresh water. Make sure you wipe it off, dry it off. That gets any extra salt and anything like that off the reel. And then once the reel is completely dry, you can go home, and then when you get home for the day, this is where I like to do the preventative maintenance. And first thing I'll do is actually take the spool off. I like to get the spool out of the way just because I don't want to get any grease or any type of chemicals on my line. So I'll go ahead and just take the spool off, get rid of that. Make sure there's no sand or debris inside the spool. Also, on the top of the spool where the cap is, I like to make sure there's no sand or salt in there as well. So if there is, I'll just wipe it away. Usually I'll use a cleanse oil, spray it onto a rag, and just wipe it clean and wipe the spool clean, get any debris out of there. Then I'll set that aside. Now what I'll do with the spool off is I will have the shaft that the spool rests on come out completely, and I'll just put a small dab of reel oil on the shaft where the spool rests. As you can see here, I'll just put a small dab on there, and with any type of grease or oil, less is more. You don't want to put too much on there. So I'll just do like so, reel it a couple times, get that shaft lubricated there with the reel lube, reel oil, and that's that for that area. Next thing I'll do is the reel handle. This is a really important part that usually gets corroded first, especially where the handle actually spins. So I'll put some reel oil right in that area, right in between the actual handle and the shaft of the handle where that part spins, just to make sure it stays free of corrosion. So I'll just put a little dab on there as well. Spin it around, make sure it gets in there. Then wipe off any excess oil so you don't get it on your hands while you're fishing. And then next is where the actual handle goes into the body. This is a big part that I make a lot of mistakes in not checking this area. And what will happen is some reels, you have the handle that actually spins off. You just spin it off like a screw, and you can put some oil in there as well. I'll go ahead and show you here. Just a little dab of oil right in there. There's a bearing in there, and a little bit of oil on the threads. And that's very important to make sure that your handle doesn't corrode and get stuck to the reel itself. because what will happen is it'll get stuck in there and you can't get it back out, which I can show you on this reel here. This is a Shimano Noski, and I actually didn't maintain this good enough, and as you can see, I cannot get that handle out from the body because it's actually stuck in there. So when you have these handles where the handle actually slides in and out of the body, it doesn't screw in like this one, I highly recommend making sure you keep the shaft of that also lubricated on the inside of the handle, whether it's out here or on the inside, and that should help keep it from getting stuck and corroded in there. If you do happen to get it stuck in there, you may have to use some type of lubricant to kind of soak. You can unscrew the other side and spray some lubricant in there. You can use cleanse oil or perhaps some Corrosion X or something to spray in there, let it soak, and hopefully the next day it should free up and you'll be able to get that handle off of there. But again, another very important area to make sure you are paying attention to so it doesn't corrode and get stuck on there. Now lastly, and probably most important, is the actual roller on your bale. This is very important to keep clean and lubricated, because if not, you're going to get a lot of friction on there from your line. That's where your line is rubbing against as it's coming out of your reel if you're fighting a fish and it's pulling drag. And if it's corroded or if there's any debris on there, you have a good chance of your line popping right at that location. So definitely make sure to keep that clean. Pretty much on all spinning reels, you'll have a screw on one side. You can just unscrew that, which I'll show you here. Comes right out. Just make sure to keep track of that screw. This is probably the only piece that I will take apart myself, just because it's not very complicated. Not a lot of things going on with it. Just make sure you don't lose the pieces. So let's go ahead and take this off here. You can see I have it apart there. I'll actually pull that piece down just to get it out of the way. Get the screw out of there, like so. And then I will do a complete inspection of that roller. Make sure there is no debris on there, especially if you use braided line. A lot of times you'll get a lot of the color that rubs off on there. And if you see any color from your braid on there, what I like to do is use some of the cleanse oil and spray it onto a Q-tip. I actually have some on the table here that came out. And I'll actually just use a Q-tip to put some of that cleanse oil on there. And also the Q-tip will take some of that coloration from your braided line off there as well. And if there is any corrosion on there, I highly recommend just replacing the roller, just because if you start rubbing it too much or scratching into it, you're going to cause more damage and it will render it pretty much completely useless. So if there's too much damage on there, just replace the actual roller itself. And also on the inside where that roller rests, I'll also put some real lube or real oil in there just to keep it nice and clean and corrosion free. We'll just put that back in. Also, it's a good idea to check these screws every now and again. Always check all the screws on your reel to make sure they're not loose, because over time what can happen is they can loosen up, and as you're using the reel, as you're casting, or even if you're fighting a fish, you might have a screw pop out, and that can obviously lead to some issues if you're trying to fight a fish or cast or retrieve a lure. So once the reel is all cleaned and lubed up and put back together, what I like to do is spray some cleanse oil on a rag, and I'll just spray it on that rag, and then I'll wipe the reel down completely all over the body, even on the roller bearing, on the bail, all over. I'll try to avoid getting any oil on the handle itself, just because you don't want a slippery handle, and also you don't want that smell on your hands all day. But just wipe down the body, make sure it's nice and coated, and that will help reduce corrosion over time and extend the life of your reel. So that will wrap up this video. Again, make sure to check that roller, make sure to keep your reel handle well lubricated on the inside and also where the handle is, and also the shaft that the spool sits on. Just put a dab of oil right on that shaft where it goes into the actual body of the reel. Give it a couple spins so it gets in there and you're good to go. So if you have any questions about this preventative reel maintenance or any additional tips you would like to share, definitely let us know in the comments down below. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.